The legend of that island was known by all the fishermen who ventured into the waters of the tropical archipelago. It was rumored that no man who passed through there came back to tell it. The name of the town was Tanzania, an incomparable place of beauty, where the beaches of fine white sand were surrounded by dense and lush tropical forests. The crystalline waters hid dangers that the most prudent fishermen preferred to avoid, but there was something even more disturbing on the island. Over the centuries, Tanzania has become a place of mystery, amazement, and fascination. Only women lived there and, according to the stories, they were known for their hypnotizing beauty and their insatiable desires. What few knew, however, was that the island itself contributed to this. The fruits that grew on the trees and the fish that swam in its waters were imbued with aphrodisiac properties. The consumption of these foods over generations had transformed women into creatures driven by an uncontrollable desire. They knew no other way of living. They could not conceive a life without giving in to their impulses. The leader of these women was Nila, a figure as impressive as the landscape of the island itself. Nila had penetrating eyes, which seemed to carry ancestral secrets, and a body sculpted by the force of the tides and the years of leadership over the island. Unlike the others, Nila had a sharp and strategical mind, and she was responsible for planning the ambushes that would ensure that the men would reach the island and never leave it. The plan was simple and lethal. When a fishing boat approached, the women hid between the trees and the rocks next to the sea. They watched in silence until the men got close enough. Then, with stones and ropes, they broke the boat so that the men were forced to swim to the shore. Wet, tired, and unaware of what had happened, they were received by the women, who offered them hospitality and shelter. The unprepared fishermen were unable to resist the seductive charm of these women. At night they were carried away by the pleasures of meat, getting lost in a spiral of lust. But the stay did not last long. When the men began to suspect and tried to escape the island, Nila made a decision. Without hesitation, she ordered the people to eliminate them. No man came out alive from Tanzania. Their bodies were buried in the forest, under lush trees that flourished as if they were feeding on death. For years, this practice remained unchanged. The island was a paradise for women and a cemetery for men, until one day a different man appeared. Kale was his name, and he was not just any fisherman. Kale grew up listening to stories about the island. His father, a brave and intrepid man, had mysteriously disappeared when passing through those waters many years earlier. Kale's mother told the stories, believing that his father had been the victim of the storms that often ravaged the sea. But Kale always knew that there was something else. Decided to discover his father's fate, Kale prepared meticulously. He knew that Tanzania was not just any island, and the rumors about the women who lived there fueled his determination. Kale trained his body, learned to deal with the traders, and built a strong but discreet ship. When he set off for Tanzania, he was prepared for anything. Or at least that's what he thought. As he approached the island, Kale saw the women hiding among the trees. He knew they were watching him, and he remained calm. As expected, his ship was attacked and he was forced to swim to the shore. When Kale stepped on the white sand of Tanzania, he felt a chill run down his back. It was not the warm wind blowing from the forest or the soft sound of the waves breaking in the background. It was something deeper, as if the earth itself was watching him, testing his strength and endurance. He knew that every step he took brought him closer to an uncertain destiny, but he was prepared for what awaited him. Or so he believed. The women on the island slowly approached, with soft smiles and welcome gestures. Nila, always in command, stood at the front, and her penetrating gaze studied the newcomer with an intensity that Kale soon perceived. She did not look like any woman he had seen before. Although her clothes were simple, light, and natural fabric, there was an air of authority in her, an intoxicating energy that seemed to dominate the room. He looked at him from top to bottom, evaluating him with a curiosity that Kale knew was nothing more than a mask of his true intentions. "Welcome to Tanzania, traveler," said Nila, with a voice as sweet and dangerous as the wind before the storm. "It must have been a difficult trip. Then you must be tired. We will take care of you." Kale, with his cunning, nodded his head and smiled, pretending innocence. He knew he had to get into his game if he wanted to find out what was really going on that island. His goal was not only to survive, but also to find the answers to his father's disappearance. "Thank you for your hospitality," he replied, making a slight reverence. "I have been drifting in the sea for hours. I do not know what I would have done without your help." The women laughed softly. Their gazes exchanged a silent complicity, as if they had heard this phrase dozens of times before. Kale followed her through the dense vegetation that bordered the beach to the heart of the town. The place was a small community surrounded by fruit trees, with huts built with wood and straw. It was a simple place, but in some way it unleashed a sensual mystery. The vibrant colors of the flowers and exotic fragrances that permeated the air left no doubt. This island did not look like any other. As they walked, Kale noticed several fruits hanging from the trees, fruits that he had never seen before, with strange shapes and colors. Were they the aphrodisiac fruits he had heard of? He observed how the women picked up the fruits and, from time to time, took them to his mouth with a face of satisfaction. He would have to understand more about this if he wanted to survive there. When he arrived at the village, they took him to a cabin away from the others, where he would take refuge. The women offered him food and drink, their eyes constantly fixed on him, like predators watching his prey. Kale remained calm, accepting what they offered, but cautiously. He knew that this was just the beginning of a carefully planned trap. That night, Kale was introduced to a party. The women of Tansaya gathered around a large bonfire, where the sound of the drums reverberated in the air. They danced hypnotically. Their bodies moved with a fluidity that seemed to challenge nature itself. Neela, always at the center of everything, danced with a fierce energy, without taking Kale's gaze away. He, on the other hand, remained attentive. While he watched the dance and the rituals, a feeling of déjà vu took hold of him. There was something about his movements, the way they looked at him, that brought him forgotten memories of his childhood. He remembered the stories his mother told him, stories about an island on which women were ruled by supernatural forces. And he remembered his father's words, which he had once briefly mentioned, before disappearing, "If one day I get lost in the sea, follow the drums, they will guide you to where I am." Kale then understood that his father had not been the victim of a maritime accident, but of something much bigger. Now he was in the same place where his father had disappeared, and this ignited in him an even greater determination to discover the truth and put an end to that curse. Those women, with their enigmatic smiles and their sensual movements, had kidnapped his father, and he was there to end the story once and for all. That night, after the feast, Kale was taken to a separate cabin, where some of the women tried to seduce him. He knew that this was the critical point of his plan. The lust, fed by the aphrodisiac food, began to take over him, but Kale kept his mind firm, pretending to give in to the temptation while, on the inside, he remained vigilant. He could not let himself be taken like the other men who had preceded him. The leader, Neela, entered the cabin shortly after, this time alone. He looked at him with his eyes closed, as if now he was studying him in another way. There was something in him that intrigued her. Kale was not like the other men they had captured over the years. There was a firmness in his eyes, a resistance that she did not see often. Approaching him, she whispered to him, "You're different, aren't you?" Neela said, her lips almost touching Kale's ear. "I can see it in you." Kale, holding his facade, smiled and replied, "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just a man who knows what he wants." Neela remained silent. Her smile disappeared for a brief moment. She knew what she was talking about. She knew what he had done to so many men before him. But there was something about Kale, perhaps the fact that he looked so much like the man she had killed years ago. The man who had challenged her and forced her to follow that path to ensure the survival of the island. Kale, realizing a momentary weakness in her, decided to press harder. "I know this island, Neela. I know its legends. I know my father came here and never returned." "You knew him, didn't you?" He approached her more, without looking away. "Tell me what happened to him." Neela shuddered slightly, but kept her composure. She was not a woman who would let herself be shaken easily. But that question struck her in a way that Kale could not predict. He knew who his father was. He clearly remembered that man. He had been one of the few to resist, to try to escape, but in the end he had also succumbed to the traps that the island had prepared. "Your father," started Neela, doubting for the first time. "He was a strong man, a man who tried to challenge fate. But, like everyone else, he failed. Kale's heart accelerated. He finally had confirmation that his father had been there, but that was not enough. He needed more. He needed justice. And what happened to him? Kale asked, his voice now full of determination. Like you did with everyone else, right? Neela lowered her eyes for a moment. She did not like to admit it, but Kale deserved to know the truth. Yes, he finally said with a firm voice. Your father was like that, but not just for me. He challenged the island, Kale. He challenged the rules that keep this place alive. We're not the villains here. We're only part of something much bigger. Part of what? Kale asked, now intrigued. Neela led him to the center of the island, where a hidden clearing in the heart of the forest revealed an ancient sanctuary. In the center there was a huge tree whose roots intertwined with the ground like an intricate network. Around the tree, several stones carved with ancient symbols told the story of Tansaya. They're the bodies of the dead men who fed the earth and, in a way, became part of the very essence of the island. This island, Neela began to explain, now with a calm and solemn voice, is much older than any of us. It protects us, but it also demands sacrifices from us. The men who come here are part of that cycle. They come, they give us their strength, and in return, we survive. We are not just avid women of pleasure, Kale. We are guardians of a secret that you would never understand. Kale listened attentively. Now he understood the truth behind the disappearances. The island, with its mysterious energy and its aphrodisiacal power, needed these men to continue to exist. The women of Tansaya, including Neela, were prisoners of a force superior to themselves. And now do you want me to become the next sacrifice? Kale challenging asked. Neela, however, slowly denied with her head. No, Kale. You are different. I sensed it from the beginning. Maybe it's your father's blood that runs through your veins, or maybe it's something else. But you won't be like the others. You can choose, Kale. You can stay and join us, or you can leave if you manage to escape. Kale knew that he had to choose, but he also knew that any decision would have a cost. He looked at the old tree, which now seemed to throb with its own energy, and then he directed his gaze at Neela. I decide to put an end to this, he said with an unbreakable firmness. The island will not take more prisoners. With those words, Kale uncovered the dagger he had brought with him, a weapon that he had kept hidden from the beginning. Neela, surprised by the sudden action, backed off for a moment, but not long enough to dodge Kale's quick blow against the tree. The leaf sank deeply into the wood, vibrating with the force of the impact. Neela, with her chest shaken, looked at him fixedly, confused but fearless. I have not come to fight with you, Neela, said Kale, with a firm but not hostile voice. I have come to end this cycle once and for all. Neela, Jade Auntie analyzed Kale. Why hadn't he attacked her directly? Why did he, unlike all the other men who had stepped on that island, have he hesitated to end a life? There was something different about him, something that she did not quite understand. Do you think you can threaten me with that? Neela laughed, her eyes burning with the same determination as before. We are free women, and this island is our domain. No man controls us. Kale let the dagger fall from the tree, but he kept it in his hands, lowering it slightly in a gesture of surrender. I have not come to control you or any other woman here. But you can't go on like this. My fight is not against your freedom, Neela. It is against the blood you spill. Neela closed her eyes, anger mixed now with doubt. You speak as if you understood what is at stake here. We're like this because of the island itself. He pointed out the food that surrounded her. Tansaya molded us, turned us into what we are. We cannot change it, not now. All the men who have come here, including your father, have tried to force us to change, to submit again to the will of men. We do not allow it, and we will never allow it. Kale took a step forward, his posture was now firmer. I do not try to change what you are. But killing those who challenge your way of life, that is not freedom. That is tyranny. And I know that deep down you understand it. Do you remember my father? Do you remember what he told you, right? Neela stopped for a moment, and her fierce expression collapsed briefly. The memories of that man were engulfed in her memory. He had been different from the others. He had not begged for his life or tried to escape by force. Instead, he had tried to talk to her, He had tried to show her what he was creating on the island. And Neela, no matter how much she tried to ignore him, knew that he was right. The fate of the island had been corrupted over time. What once was a refuge for women had become a prison. A vicious circle of violence and lust. A circle that she herself had helped to perpetuate. Your father said that we could change, Neela admitted, with the lowest voice, almost inaudible. But I couldn't believe him. If we change, what will remain of us? Kale kept the dagger, taking another step forward, now closer to Neela. He could see the conflict in her eyes, the internal battle between the fierce leader and the woman who once dreamed of something more than surviving. You will continue to have the freedom that you have always sought, said Kale softly. But you don't have to shed blood to preserve it. You can create a new life, without the weight of the debts you carry. What my father tried to do, I can continue. But only if you want to. Neela kept silent for a long time, with her eyes fixed on Kale's, as if looking for the truth in his words. The island seemed to breathe around her, as if even nature was waiting for her decision. Finally, she sighed, closing her eyes a moment before opening them again, with her usual firmness, but now mixed with something new. Something like hope. If I let you get out of here alive, the other women will want revenge. They won't accept it so easily. Nothing crossed their arms, but there was a fatigue in their posture that had not existed before. Kale smiled slightly, realizing that it was the first sign that she was willing to change. It doesn't have to be easy, Neela. It just has to be possible. The island leader looked at the horizon for a moment, as if she were contemplating something beyond the sea, something bigger than herself. Finally, she turned to Kaylee. With a brief head tilt, she spoke. Go away. Before she changed her mind. Kale, surprised, hesitated for a second. He had expected a fight to the end, but not this. Even so, he knew that it was his opportunity to fulfill the promise that he had made to himself and his father. He assented Neela, who was watching him with a mix of respect and jealousy, and began to walk towards the beach. That night, while the people were sleeping, Kale found what he was looking for, a small boat hidden among the bushes near the beach. He spent the following days reinforcing the secret ship, repairing the sails and preparing his flight. He knew that the confrontation with Neela would be inevitable, but he was prepared. When they reached the shore, the other women watched them from afar, confused and incredulous. No one had ever come out alive from that island. But this time something had changed. Neela had allowed it. Kale looked towards the forest where the shadows of Tansaya were hidden. He knew that this was just the beginning of a new story for the island, but at the same time he felt that his father would be somehow proud of what he had done. Kale jumped into the boat, untied the ties, and with great effort, he drifted away from the beach. As the island disappeared on the horizon, Kale looked back for the last time, knowing that he had just escaped from something much bigger than he could have imagined. He had not only survived, but had broken the cycle of death that had caught so many before him. And with that, the island of Tansaya would never be the same again. As for Neela, she stayed on the beach, watching as the boat disappeared in the immensity of the ocean. As he drifted away from the island, the sun set on the horizon, projecting orange and red tones over the waters. The island, for a long time a symbol of death, seemed to rest now under a new light, waiting for a different future. And Neela, standing on the beach, watched as Kale's boat disappeared along the horizon, feeling for the first time in years that the island of Tansaya could be reborn at last. Do not forget to comment below what you think of this story and what you have learned from it. Please subscribe to our channel and like our video. We love you all, our dear subscribers. God bless your lives.